When we talk about players that completely changed the league, I feel like we often leave out some extremely important names. I remember Colin Cowherd made a list about 8 players that changed the NBA forever, and while I agree with most, there were definitely some key players that were left out. Now, I'm not going to bore you by being Mr. NBA historian, so my list isn't going to have Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, because we all know they're the pioneers of the NBA. I'm going to focus on more of the modern NBA, the NBA me and you got to watch. But before we get into the video, I want you guys to make sure that you're following this channel, subscribe, turn on post notifications, follow my social media sites. All that stuff is heavily appreciated, so make sure you're doing that. And without further ado, let's get into this banger. I know y'all miss my voice.
So who brought the Euro step to America? That guy did, Manu Ginobili. That hammer pass that LeBron takes credit for, Ginobili invented it. It's the one where you throw it from corner to corner all the way up the baseline. Ginobili brought it here because, as Tim Duncan concluded his remarks, genius. He just turned to him and he said, genius. He was basketball genius. No one has ever played harder on a nightly basis, a dribble-to-dribble basis, than Manu Ginobili. Nobody's played with more creative flair and fire than Manu Ginobili.
Manu Ginobili is definitely the main player that gets overlooked when we talk about a player changing the NBA. Normally, when we talk about the great history of the Spurs, we bring up Tim Duncan or Greg Popovich. When we talk about great international players, we bring up Dirk Nowitzki or Hakeem Olajuwon. But people forget, in 2004, Manu Ginobili led Argentina to an Olympic gold medal against a stacked USA team. I mean, I know a lot of these names were young, but that USA team had LeBron, D-Wade, Carmelo, Tim Duncan, Allen Iverson. I mean, the list goes on, and Manu beat them. Also, as Skip said, Manu brought one of the most creative moves to America with that Euro step. To me, if you look at a player like James Harden, he's not too athletic, he's a lefty, he's very creative and very crafty, and he got a lot of his style from Manu Ginobili. I mean, with the Euro step, the way he's able to create and draw weird looking fouls, he basically adopted Manu's style and took it to a completely different level. So for that reason alone, and how popular and utilized that Euro step is, you have to add Manu Ginobili when you talk about somebody changing the NBA. I mean, you just have to. Now next, Stefan Curry. As we all know, this man is simply the greatest shooter to ever shoot a basketball. Now I know this isn't solely because of Steph, but he's definitely a big part of this. Before he got into the league 3-point attempt average per game was sitting steady at around 18 per game, not too much. But since Stephen Curry won all these MVPs, did all this crazy stuff with the 3-pointers, it's around double the amount, so you can see the impact. The Warriors, led by Stephen Curry's shooting, completely destroyed the myth that jump shooting teams can't win NBA championships. And now you see teams like the Rockets with James Harden basically trying to emulate the exact same formula so they can win championships themselves. Now it seems like threes have become so effective that even the bigs have to have some type of outside shot. You can definitely blame Stephen Curry for a lot of that, so it's just that simple. Now next, a player that's never brought up in this conversation, Kevin Durant. Before Kevin Durant proved what he can do, you would never look at a player of his height as a real perimeter threat. I mean, it was almost like a rule that if you're a certain height, you get your big ass on the block and you post up. You don't dribble the ball, you don't take the ball in the wing, you post up and wait for the damn ball, you big as hell. But now, since we've seen how effective a big that's actually light and good on his feet can be, Kevin Durant is arguably the greatest scorer ever, and most of it is because of that length at that position. That wasn't always the case. Bigs used to be on the block. Now, since we've seen how great KD is at that height on the perimeter, he's created opportunities for players like Giannis, Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingrams, and players in the future, and trust me, it'll be way more. So Kevin Durant, he doesn't really get talked about in this conversation, but trust me, he's very significant for the future. Now next, Dirk Nowitzki. I was really surprised when I seen Colin's list and he didn't put Dirk on his list. I was very surprised by that one. Dirk was easily one of the first bigs to truly get that title as a stretch big, and he actually won with it. Basically, Dirk helped bring in a whole new wave of sharpshooting bigs that basically revolutionized that power forward position forever. I mean, look at the great power forwards before Dirk. Karl Malone, Charles Barkley's. These dudes lived in the paint and they basically dominated inside, and he was the total opposite. Nowadays, when we see a big that can shoot, and especially if he's international, the inevitable comparison is Dirk Nowitzki because he did it at the highest level. To me, I don't understand how you leave him out of this list. I'll put him over Tim Duncan as far as changing the NBA because he brought in a whole new wave of big men, so gotta give him that respect. Now next on this list, and this one is kind of a weird one because I'm combining two players, but Derrick Rose. The player I'm combining him with is Russell Westbrook. They both were drafted at the exact same time and they're both athletic as hell. The reason I put these two guys on this list is because the athleticism they brought at a point guard position. Point guards are traditionally the smallest players on the court, so you would never really classify them as dominant. You don't really see them in the air catching alley-oops with their tongue hanging out, dunking and all that stuff. You don't really see that as a point guard, but these two guys kind of changed that. Russell Westbrook just came off a season where he averaged a triple-double as a 6'3" point guard for the third straight season. If you really think about that, that stuff is unreal. And in his prime, Derrick Rose led a Bulls team to 62 wins and 1 MVP. And in that MVP season, he was dunking like crazy. So you just see a different side of point guards. I feel like as far as modern change in the NBA, it's hard not to put these two guys on the list because as far as athleticism as a point guard, these two guys were like at the top. So it's hard not to put them on the list. Now next, but not last, LeBron James. This is the easiest one. LeBron has changed the NBA in so many ways, it's literally too much to name. I mean, he's literally created TV careers, so we all know his impact. I'ma just name the biggest way that I feel like he changed the NBA. In 2006, when he and all his other draft class buddies were due for another contract, instead of signing the long, drug-out 5-year deal that everybody signs, the standard deal, LeBron convinced Wade and Bosh to sign a 3-year shorter deal so in 2010 they can possibly team up together, which is exactly what happened. This was basically LeBron's way of having a little bit more freedom and foreseeing the future. Like, I don't want to be pinned down with one team forever when they don't make the right moves, so he saw the future and strategically planned that free agency move. After that, LeBron completely controlled his NBA destiny in a way that's never quite been done. And now players all across the board, even borderline scrubs, they control exactly where they want to be, and they kind of took the power out of the owner's hands and now they control it. You can credit LeBron for a lot of the control and a lot of the freedom players have nowadays, so you got to give him that credit. Now, the last player on this list, and I talked about him in my last video, Allen Iverson.
How do you feel about the dress code, the NBA dress code?
Doesn't matter, you know. Right now, it is what it is, and you know, it's a rule, and you just abide by it.
They made a big deal when I was doing it, and some of the stuff these dudes wearing. Come on, man. They were picking on me then, obviously. They let these guys wear what they're wearing now. This should be a new one, because this is out of control.
As I mentioned in my last video, Allen Iverson wasn't liked by the media, but the urban community loved him. Basically, the media didn't like him because he was a little too authentic and a little too real for the NBA. He didn't walk and talk with a stick up his ass. He wasn't a puppet. He wasn't controlled. He wasn't all politically correct. He was just simply him. I mean, he popularized the braids, the tattoos, he had his sleeve, he wore his baggy clothes, and the media, they just couldn't stand that man. David Stern definitely couldn't. David Stern didn't like him so much, he even implemented a dress code rule because of how he was walking into games. But if you look at the NBA now, the players wear whatever crazy outfits they want, and Allen Iverson, when he was doing it, he was hated, and they even made a rule for it. Allen Iverson is kind of the Tupac of the NBA because he took the hits for a lot of the stuff they do right now. Listen to this. This man was so disliked. This man didn't even get an invitation to the 2008 Olympic team. Every single All-Star got an invitation except Allen Iverson, and they did that for a reason. They was blackballing him. Mind you, he just came off a season where he played all 82 games and averaged 26. So he wasn't a bum, they just didn't like him. If you ask me, AI kind of created this whole free culture where players express who they really are. So at least all that criticism and all that stuff he went through, it didn't just go in vain. So I'm happy about that. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up. Make sure you guys follow my social medias. Remember, this list, I wasn't going to add all the ancient players because we all know about Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, and all those players. It was more the modern NBA, so remember that. If you guys like the video, make sure you guys leave a like, follow all of my social medias, do all that great stuff, guys. And until next time, as always, stay tuned.